Your team determines your traction. Today on the Blue Collar Proud Show. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Blue Collar Proud Show. It's the show all about having and living the blue collar business dream. You're headed somewhere toward success, toward the life that you've always dreamed of, that dream that you had the day you started your business. Taylor and I want to be along for that journey of your success. Thank you so much for tuning in every single week. My name is Carter Harkins, and with me across the table is Taylor Hill.
How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you.
Good. So we're continuing a conversation today with Danny Kerr, talking about, last week we talked about planning and time management, what's necessary as a business owner to get your hands around and your head around what's necessary to grow successfully. Today we're talking about who is necessary to grow successfully. And that's all about hiring the right team, hiring the people that you need to grow your business. Hiring is probably the number one challenge we hear about all the time.
Yep.
And it's going to be the subject of today's podcast. But first I need to talk about our sponsor.
Oh,
because I always forget that.
Don't miss that.
No, it's right here at the top of my show notes. And I always get excited about getting into the conversation. Yeah. But I do want to tell you about Closing Commander. The Closing Commander is the app for busy contractor service businesses that simply cannot figure out a way to add to their sales system that last component, which is following up on an open estimate. Open estimates in most businesses add up to be hundreds of thousands, sometimes even millions of dollars. We've heard as high as $8 million in one service business that we're familiar with. $8 million of potential revenue sitting in a pile on the owner's desk, and no one was following up. No one could tell that owner whether or not any of those open estimates were ever going to turn into business or not. Closing Commander is an automated way to be able to follow up on those estimates in that stack, to reduce that stack, eliminate that stack, and turn that stack into cash in your business. If that sounds like something that would help your business, we want to give you a special offer to be able to do that. Because you're a because you're a Blue Collar Proud Show listener, you get your entire first month free. That's if you click the link in today's show notes or in the show notes or the special offers section of the Blue Collar Proud Show app. So you can get more information over at closingcommander.com. But if you want to sign up, use the link in today's show notes. Sign up and get your first month entirely free. Check it out, closingcommander.com. Okay.
Now we can talk
Now we
about
can get
hiring.
into it and talk about it.
Well, I want to know something.
Okay.
I want to know what your thoughts are about the importance of training and giving opportunity when dealing with the younger generations and how that translates to other generations. And the reason I want to know that is this. 9 times out of 10, what I hear from the blue-collar trade owners of companies is, I can't find anybody willing to work.
Yeah, right. So some of this is a little bit of a generational gap, that we see. It's no secret. Articles have been written about it, people talking about it, the skills gap. But part of the issue around the skills gap is the fact that many of the employees and owners of contractor service businesses and trades are aging out.
Yeah.
And we see it mentioned occasionally in some of these articles, but any of our articles that have been written specifically about that. But there's an age, there's an advanced age that's starting to show up in the trades. And we talk to a lot of business owners that are like, man, I look around and everybody I've hired is my age, which is great because I understand them and we all get along and we all have the same values and ethics and work standards and everything else. But we're getting old to be climbing these ladders and to be hauling this stuff and doing what we're doing. I've got to figure out, how to attract younger people. And that is the number one challenge in blue collar businesses that we talk to. I personally believe that within the millennial generation, there's a wealth of people willing to do the work. This idea that they only want to do sexy jobs in computing and technology and things is I don't believe that. I've met many millennials who have a great work ethic and are not afraid to pick up a hammer or to get dirty and do what needs to be done. They enjoy working with their hands. They like being outside of an office environment and working outside, working with their hands, building things, doing stuff, using, developing skills in the trades. So that's not the problem. I think what the problem is most millennials look around in the trades at the different companies that are hiring and they see dead-end jobs.
Yeah.
They see worker positions. They see help wanted signs instead of build a career type opportunities.
Right.
They see no advancement, no opportunity for training, no opportunity for building a set of skills that they can use for the rest of their lives. And they also, this is just being honest, but they also look at the people, the bosses, the owners of these companies and think, I don't want to work for that guy.
Yeah.
He's mired in the past. He doesn't even have the ability to book an appointment on his website. He doesn't even have, he's not even using field management software on iPads in the field. And why would I want to work for a company that's not, using the tools that I'm familiar with and that I know that the customers are expecting now? And they also look at the leadership and they see this man who, and guys, do not doubt this for a second. Any millennial that's considering working for you, before they ever fill out an application or hand you a resume, they've already checked you out on Facebook. And if you, the owner, have a profile on Facebook and you're talking politics and you're degrading women or you're talking about sexist things or typical I'm going to say old guy stuff, right? I mean, older generation stuff. That millennial is repulsed by that and does not want to look to you for any kind of leadership. So why would they want to come work for you and submit themselves to 8 to 10 to 12 hours worth of their time every single day to be, held captive by that old mentality? They're looking for leadership and they want to see it in you. And if they don't find it there, then they're not going to come. And I'm just going to say there's a crisis of good leadership in blue collar industries. And that is the problem we've got to fix if we're ever going to solve the skills gap. We've got to solve the leadership gap first.
I think there's a crisis in leadership in this country right now. I mean, I'm not going to go any further than that, but we have a crisis of leadership.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I mean, absolutely. And here's the thing. Had I had the ability to find out what my bosses thought, how they spoke, what their politics were, and all those other things, I can tell you there are two bosses that I would have never, ever worked for. Ever.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Because they were not people that lined up with the way that I view the world. And so knowing that, if you do that, if you're not open to different points of view, if you're not open to change, if you're not open to others, then it's not about core values. Okay? And this is a big thing. You can be, right now we're going into politics, so I'm going to say you can be Republican and Democrat and share core values and get along really well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's not about those differences. It's about your core values that line up. But if you make it about the differences, then all of a sudden, who's gonna come to work for you?
Absolutely.
And I've had other owners that said, I don't want anybody that doesn't line up with my politics and my beliefs and all that. I want them out there because those are the kind of people that I want to work for me. And I'm like, that's fine, but you're not. You also have customers out there that they're in the same boat. So be careful.
Yeah.
Because you've got customers that are looking at your Facebook page and going through that. So if you're going to eliminate, half, I'll just say that half's one and half's the other, no matter what your belief is. Let's just say it's a 50-50 split. As soon as you put that on Facebook or as soon as you put that on Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever, then half the people aren't going to use you. So you're cutting your market share before you even get started.
And here's the place where age actually is an advantage for you. So if you're a business owner of a certain age and you're listening, I guarantee you, if you thought about it, you could remember back to a time when business interactions, personal interactions with people in your community weren't about politics and they weren't about religion. Mm-hmm. Those subjects rarely came up. That was a private matter. That was something that you held to yourself, and you found other ground to communicate with and connect with other people. It's only in the past 15 years or so, 20 years, that politics has become, it's been longer than that, but I mean, especially in the past 20 years, that politics has become a dividing point in our politics, in our ability to communicate as human beings with other people. We've used it as a dividing point. Religion is the same way now. It's incredibly, it's amazing to me divisive. How many business owners are willing to stake the future of their business on their particular politics and their particular religious views. And simply say, this is who I am, and if you don't like it, you can go suck an egg, and everybody else, all the other people that they could be doing business with are looking at that and going, okay, I'll do exactly what you told me. I'll go somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean,
you're just blowing up your business.
Yeah. I don't understand it, but, I get it. And I think we've lost the ability to critically think, but, that's my opinion.
Yeah, we're a little bit of a sidetrack there.
We are.
This is about hiring, but good leadership from a hiring standpoint means that you're providing somebody more opportunity to grow, for training, for leadership, to become, to see a path for them to create a career in your business. And I see way too many now hiring signs that are just about, you must be able to carry 50 pounds and climb a ladder and have a valid driver's license and pass a drug test. And that's it. That's all they're asking for. And I'm not hearing anything about, here's what I want to help you build in your life for you. It's all about, hey, we're a great company, lots of fun to work with, but you got to meet these criteria and physically, be able to do the job. Those things are important. But that's not what this millennial generation is looking for in terms of what they want from a job.
And I'll just want to add this in, because critical thinking in a technical standpoint, whether it's working with computers, whether it's working on a air conditioning, whether it's doing a chimney and all the physics that you need, all that requires critical thinking. So if you as the owner are not a critical thinker, you're probably not going to attract other critical thinkers. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important to remember that, to put on what you're looking for are people that can critically think and solve problems. Because there are a lot of young people that, man, that speaks volumes.
That's a motivator.
Yes.
I want somewhere that my brain power, my ability to solve big problems is appreciated and given a place to flourish, and where I can build skills around my understanding of how to solve even more complicated problems.
Yeah, I think that's huge.
Yeah.
But let's see what Danny's got to say about it, because I'm sure he's going to have a whole lot more than just what you and I can come
Probably
up with.
more interesting than we are for sure. So let's talk again with Danny Kerr. We're going to hear what he has to say about hiring and how he sees those challenges in service businesses. So here's Danny Kerr from Breakthrough Academy, and we'll be back afterwards to chat some more. Back on the phone with us again is Danny Kerr with Breakthrough Academy. Danny, so glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great.
So this is the number one pain point for every single listener I know. We've done surveys on this. We talk with them at conferences and events all the time. And the pain point is, and we're going to get into this because there's some really interesting dynamics that are starting to shift, but it's this need for good people and the belief that there are no good people out there to be had. And I think those two things have to be discussed together in order to really solve the problem. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh boy, I got lots of thoughts about this one. Here's an interesting thought. In 2008, what was the biggest challenge for everybody? 2008, 2009, what was the biggest challenge for everybody?
Getting business,
right?
Yeah.
There's no work left. There's a recession happening. The external factors changed on us. The economy changed, and we had to change accordingly. And some of us changed quicker than others, and ultimately those who did change quick enough are still around to this day, and some of us went out of business. And the economy always changes. It's continuing to change. In the last 5 years, it's changed again, but now the finite resource isn't getting work, it's getting people. But yet when I sit down, we have 210 companies we work with, and I go through everyone's budgets and I look through what everyone's spending on their time and their money for their company. I see a very interesting pattern. they're spending 20, 30, 40, sometimes $100,000 on things like AdWords and signs and flyers and all these marketing materials that for the past 10 years they were told they had to do to stay in business because they had to. And then I look at their recruiting budget. I'm like, you're spending $500 on recruitment and you're telling me that that's your biggest challenge? And I look at their calendars. I'm like, you're spending all this time booking jobs and doing quotes for clients and running sales teams. Where's your interview spaces? Where's your times to sit down and post these things? There's no time in for this stuff. And yet they look at me time and time again and say, Danny, my biggest challenge is finding good people. And there's a lot of tactics I'll give you guys today, but the first thing would just be that understanding of like, how much time, effort, and money are you spending on that versus sales and marketing? And should you maybe reallocate a little bit to that side of the business?
Danny, you're my best friend. I cannot tell you, I get so frustrated with talking to people and saying, what do you do in recruiting? And they're like, oh, Craigslist and this and that. And I'm like, no, recruiting. Recruiting is not just putting an ad out somewhere.
Right.
You gotta actively recruit if you're gonna get good people. And they don't. They put no money towards it, and they get mad when they can't find a bunch of A players.
Yeah.
So can I ask you, Danny, what does that look like when it's done right?
Let's walk through it.
Okay.
There's a process to it. There's an actual process to it. So I'll give you guys some background on this too. So again, I spoke a little to my background before, but I spent a few years basically recruiting for a corporate franchisor. And my mandate was to hire 150 franchises a year. It was quite intense. These were student franchises, so they weren't big adult ones, but I had to find 150 young people that could manage and run their own small business. So basically like project managers or sales managers. I would get about 100 resumes a day, and I would filter through them. And basically over the course of 365 days of the year, I would be hiring 150 like pretty high level business managers. So that's roughly one every 2 days. It was a pretty intense schedule. But how I did that is what I'll walk you guys through. So it's there's a very set system that I've kind of half created, half learned, and kind of created a little kind of way to do it.
Awesome.
So the first thing I think is really important for people to think about is transitioning from I'm just recruiting, so like a bit of an ego of like people should come to me, to I'm doing a bit of a sales and marketing process first, right? So we need to attract and really draw in the right types of people. And as soon as you think that way, you realize, wait, when I'm doing marketing, I usually want to market to like a certain type of client. Well, you should do the same thing for the certain type of employee. You want like what we call an ideal candidate. And so we have some templates and stuff we're going to give away at the end of this podcast here, but there's an ideal candidate profiling sheet that you should be filling out so you can understand their strengths, their weaknesses, their core values, their wants, their needs, what they love about their job, what they hate about their job, what motivates them, gets them up in the morning, what are their long-term goals. Like sitting down and understanding these things about your ideal candidates will help you a ton in selling and attracting the right types of people to your company. So we'll get into how to use this in a second, but just let that sink in for a second. And the best place to find out what those actual things are about this person is probably from somebody you already have on the team. If you've got a rock star project manager and you're like, man, I would love to have 2 more of you, take that guy out for lunch and ask him all those types of questions. We have a big interviewing chart that you're going to ask him on stuff about him, but you're going to use this now to create a custom campaign to attract more of those types of people. That kind of makes sense.
I love it. You're not just observing how they do their job and trying to take a guess about, what qualities make them effective. You're actually asking that effective person, what excites you? What are you interested in? How do you, what makes you tick and motivates you to work at the level that you're working? I think that absolutely helps, because I bet the next thing you're going to tell me is you're going to take that and use it to write the ads, right?
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
All right. So talk about what that looks like.
Yeah. So like, I'll even say, so it's like, I remember one of my project managers I sat down with, he was big into sports. He was a quarterback on his football team. I hired him because he was a good team player, but really what I realized sitting down with him was he was with me because I ran my business like we were a sports team. Right. So like I was his coach. He was basically MVP of the team, and he was managing everybody, and he was the quarterback scoring goals every day for us because we had goals every week we had to hit, and we had a driven team that was all trying to hit that, and he was in charge of orchestrating that. And to him, that was like the beauty of working with me. He was like, yeah, I make good money, but for me, I feel respected by you. I feel like you give me trust and freedom to go run these teams, and ultimately I love it because it's just like scoring touchdowns on the field. And I was like, I'm going to use all that language for this ad, right? So instead of saying project manager needed, I said, painting company needing, a quarterback to take us home and score out in the painting field or whatever. Like I kind of phrased it in a sports terminology. I spoke to the company description, but only spoke to the things he said he loved about our company. I spoke about the description of duties that the person's going to be in charge of, but I only put the duties in that guy said he loves to do every day. Right. So I really tried to speak to that type of person. Now below that, I also put in a description of things required to apply, because I obviously want to set up some barriers. So I kind of, if you think about it, I drew up an attracting title. Then I drew up 2 really good paragraphs, one on the company, one on the description of duties that really sell the job to that type of person. And then I finally put in a qualifier section that basically says, if you want to actually, now that you're drooling over this job, here's the things that I demand from you, right? So a bit of a pushback. And at the very bottom, have a call to action. So that's the way I structure all of our ads. Have a very cool, engaging statement or title that people can click on. And then a description of the company, a description of duties, but based on what this person said they love. And really try and speak to their inner thoughts, right? And say things in the ad that they're like, man, how do they know that that's important to me? Well, because I interviewed this other guy and I just used his terminology to build the ad properly. Instead of where I see a lot of people build ads, it's all about them. This is what we need. This is what we want. We're looking for this. If you're this, let us know. But it's very one directional and it doesn't really attract people properly.
So you talk to the guy out there who's listening that's like, what do you mean I have to make my business attractive? I mean, they should just be thankful they get a job and they should show up and do what I tell them and just be grateful for the opportunity. Because I mean, we still encounter people like that.
You know what? The number one thing that stops people from moving forward in business is stubborn pride and ego. It really you have to. I've always, since I've started this thing, I just approach it with, I'm going to work hard and I'm going to be humble. And if I can pursue my people that way, I can work with my customers that way, I can work with myself, especially that way, I can continue to grow. But the minute I have an ego about something or I have a preconceived notion about how things have to be, I'm going to screw myself over.
Every time.
All right. So I'm going to ask kind of the 100-pound gorilla question in the room. And this is, how do you talk to somebody who has preconceived notions when it comes to gender and race when they're talking about their hiring? Because we run into that from time to time, and it's less and less. But I want to talk about that because there are people who don't think that women need to be in the trades or they don't need to be in certain positions in the trades. And there are some race-related things that happen from time to time. So how do you address that when and I'm not saying it's even overt. A lot of times it's just the way people have been raised and think, and they don't even realize it. So how can you address that?
That doesn't happen in Canada, though, does it?
I was just going to say, first off, I'm from Canada, so I don't know, man. We're just chilling with maple syrup.
Yeah, there you go.
No, but in seriousness, I mean, at the end of the day, there's a couple things at play here. So at the end of the day, as a company, you probably have some sort of a company culture. You probably have some sort of a vision of how you see everybody working together and getting along and really ultimately having the same core values. And that hands down is extremely important. And you do not want to ignore that. You need to find people with very similar core values, because if everyone's got different core values, the whole company's going to fall apart, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But core values have nothing to do with race or gender or anything when you really look at it. Now, does that mean that some people have different core values because they grew up in a certain part of the world and came over? Maybe, potentially, but doesn't mean that all of them do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or does that mean that a certain, female or male has a certain way of seeing the world? And maybe generally, but that doesn't mean everybody, right? And I think just being open and realizing that, people are different. Everyone has different life situations and everyone grows up in a different kind of world. Seeking more to understand people's core values versus just kind of the outside appearance of how somebody looks is a very healthy way to interview and look at people. But just judging from the outside, you could hire people that look like the ideal fit, and you'll realize later on their core values stink and you screwed yourself. So just really redirecting that conversation to really look at core values over the external side of somebody.
Core values are universal. They apply to every human being. Any core value that you have is going to be something that's an admirable trait that others would aspire to have as well. That's probably the best way to look at hiring. When other factors play a role, you do end up having a company full of people that you understand because they're just like you. But at some point, and I had a business owner tell me, he said, I'm 65 years old. And one day I looked around my business and I didn't have a single employee under 55. And we're all trying to climb up on roofs and do our job. And I'm thinking, this isn't going to work anymore. I can't keep surrounding myself with people just like me. I've got to go out and hire younger workforce. And that may mean that I've got to change a little bit in order to do that. I've got to look at my core values and make sure that they're universal and make sure that my prejudices aren't getting in the way.
Totally. Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So for Breakthrough Academy, the company we run right now, our core values are embrace the journey, be real, and have a genuine care for people. Okay? And everybody that we work with has those core values. Now, if somebody's a little older, a little younger, is female, is male, is from another country, but they embody those core values, then we're always going to be fine, right? And I don't think that, like, I'll give an example. Embrace the journey. I think that sometimes we'll meet some people that are maybe a little older and they won't always embrace the journey. They're like, no, I'm kind of stuck in my ways. I've got my ways, and either you like them or you don't. That's fine. That's just our core values are embrace the journey. But that said, one of our top guys, who Terry Stimpson is one of our cold callers, is 65 years old. He's awesome to work with, and he embraces the journey all day long. And I love the guy, but I will not waver on my core values regardless. So if you've got a big old crew of a bunch of older guys, but you've got core values that really matter, I bet you'll find that in young people too. It just might be a little harder to find, but do not waver from those, because the minute you let go of those, you're going to let go of the core of a major company great in the first place.
And I'll just tell you, I'm going to be 61 this month. So, the whole thing about that being older, that you can't mesh and have the same core values as the younger generation is just crap. Because the guys that work with us are predominantly millennial generation, all the way down to 20, probably 23, 22 years old. And they share the same core values of our company that I share. And so this idea that age has something to do with it's just crap. And so I think it's the same with age, gender, everything. It doesn't matter. Core values is the absolute essence of any business. And if you can get that right, then you're about 90% there.
The rest kind of falls in place. It's interesting. When you understand your core values and your brand is built around it and you talk and speak and everything is advertised accordingly and it's all very uniform, the right people get drawn to you, actually.
Yep.
And it's quite interesting how that organically happens.
It's a huge time saver. But talk specifically about millennials. We've beat that horse quite a bit here, but I think it bears repeating. And I'm always curious to hear other people speak about it to gain insight about some of the struggles that just in overcoming the mental. In order to lead younger people, you have to change your leadership style, and that is hard for some blue-collar business owners to really manage. So talk about that.
This is a cool topic because I'm 31, right? So I've been running a business through my teen years and into my 30s now, and I've always worked with mostly, I would say, younger people, I would say. And so I've always attracted millennials. I've always worked with millennials. I've seen very clearly what it takes to drive them and get results from them. I'll be the first to put my hand up too and say, man, there is a bunch of lazy ass millennials out there that are super self-entitled and have no idea what a hard day of work is actually like. I will be the first to put my hand up and stand up for that. That said, if you know how, and we'll talk a little bit about how to attract the right people. If you know how to attract people that really understand hard work and core value that your company cares about, you can get through that in a millennial all day long. I've got a team of 15. They work bloody hard. They care a ton about what we do. And they're all bought in for this for the long term. They're not just here for a paycheck. But the reason being is our onboarding process was very specific and tight, which we can talk a little bit about if you guys want to keep going down that direction. But we have a very, basically like, a 2-hour-long interview just to get started with us, let alone what happens after that for onboarding. There's like 2 or 3 of them after that people have to go through. Tight expectations, a 9-page employment agreement with clear roles, goals, and deliverables. There's a lot of structure for these younger people. They really need structure to know how to deliver on the promises that we're trying to have them give. And then a lot of training. I build into these people. I have training time in my week every single week. So I set goals with them on a Monday, and I'll go out and do field training with them every single week. And as long as I've set up good expectations with them, I'm building into them constantly, and I'm helping them evolve and advance, then they're bought into what we're doing. But if I just want to be transactional with them and then sign them into an agreement and then force them to do their job and say, I'm paying you money to do your job, shut up and do your job, that transactionalness will turn them off really quickly, and they'll become your worst nightmare.
And then, at least here in the U.S., with what everyone is terming full employment, you don't really have much. You don't want to run too many people off with that kind of attitude.
Yeah, it is interesting, and it is just the world has changed, and I think that younger people want to feel a part of something. They want to feel inspired. They want to be built into and developed over time, because to be honest, a lot of young people don't have good mentors in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And if they had somebody that believed in them and built into them properly and took time to work with them, they would buy into it more too. And that's not saying for all millennials. I've met millennials that really do just take advantage of situations and just, are lazy, and they'll just try and take as much as they can and do nothing for it. But again, that's why I said the onboarding process is so important to interview people effectively. We always interview on personality over skill, right? So I'll look at someone's ability to set and hit goals, their ability to manage stress, their introspection, so how observant they are of themselves and others. And certain personality traits like that matter way more than how well they know how to swing a hammer.
Well, and I'm just going to tell you, people are people. You're not just talking about millennials.
Yeah,
you're also talking about 40,
generation.
50, 60, 70-year-olds, because I know a whole bunch of those that aren't worth crap either, that are just lazy and entitled as well.
Yeah.
I know an 80-year-old that's like that.
Well, maybe he's allowed to be at this point.
Exactly. So I'm just saying, that is kind of people. So you've got to find the right people, and that takes effort to do that, and it takes some skill.
It really is a marketing problem.
Yes, it's a marketing problem, and people don't always see that. Yep.
Yeah. Do you want me to give you my most kick-ass marketing way to market out a job?
Absolutely.
Let's hear it.
All right. It's a very modern way to do it, but it works really well. So one of the things we do is once we drop these job descriptions, we actually host them on our website. So we create a little backlink off of our site. You can also just create a PDF file. It's fine. But what we get all of our staff together to do is do a bit of a recruiting campaign together. So we do a referral recruiting push. So I'll get them all together on a Friday, let's say like Friday, 3 o'clock, end of the day, pull them all into the office for pizza and beer. And so I'm going to respect their time and have a bit of fun with them. I'll explain to them like, hey, we're looking for XYZ person. We're looking for another Jimmy, another project manager. Jimmy's awesome, but he's overworked. We need one more. What we would love is to do an exercise with you guys for 2 hours to help find this person. So everyone brings their laptops and their phones and whatever. And what we give them is a little message that usually says something like this. It says, hey, so-and-so, our company XYZ is looking for a person XYZ role. Curious, do you know anyone who'd fit this description? See link below. P.S. We're offering a $500 hiring bonus if you do know anybody. And then what they do is they individually personally message 100 to 200 people on their Facebook. So not just like a general post on Facebook. It's literally like like through Facebook Messenger. One to Sally, one to Rob, one to Rick, one to John, and they individually message each person for an hour or two until they've got a couple hundred messages out. And so we've got 15 staff right now. That's 1,500 messages that go out in the course of 2 hours. And what they're doing is drawing people into this link that's custom, built to really attract this right kind of person, because we've drawn up the ad in that way. And it's a personal message, so it's going to ding on that person's phone. We're going to get a lot of people viewing this thing. And we're sending it to people who are good fits, and we're also sending it to people who are good connectors. And we're not saying, hey, would you be a good fit? We're saying, do you know anybody? So it leaves the conversation open for them to self-interpret if they're interested or not. And ultimately, it's less threatening for that person. It also gives that person a chance to look at your ad who never normally would, because maybe they're in a job. But maybe you drew up that ad in a way that really attracted that type of person, where they're like, man, this is a way better fit for me. And when you get your staff involved in that, you have a much higher, chance of seeing and getting the right person in your world, because your staff are probably fairly like-minded and they know like-minded people.
Yeah, and good people typically hang out with other good people.
Totally. So every time we have a recruiting need, we drop an ad, get an ideal candidate profile done, and then we basically launch it to our team. And that literally is the way we've hired everybody.
I love that. That alone, awesome. For those of you listening, is absolutely gold.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Hey, Danny, I want to ask you, because I know you have specifically, you mentioned toward the top of the interview that you had something you wanted to provide listeners. So I want you to be able to talk about what that is and how they can get it.
Sure. So Breakthrough Academy is the company we run now. We essentially do training and development for trades and home service companies. One of the things we teach is recruitment. So we've drawn up a bit of a recruiting package, per se, that you could use. So it's got a conversion call form. It helps you set up your interviews properly. It's got an ideal candidate worksheet, so you can start to work through who your ideal candidate is that you're actually looking for. It's got a job posting worksheet and an example of what a good job posting actually looks like. It's even got a bit of an org structure example, so you can think through who's next in your company, like who should you actually be hiring for. So that's at, if you go to the website, btacademy.com/BCP. So BT Academy stands for Breakthrough and then Academy. And then /BCP stands for Blue Collar Proud. So btacademy.com/BCP. And that should be in the show notes as well. When you do get in there, just make sure you type in the code. You'll see a little place to put in a code. It's hiring08. And that just helps us know what templates to be sending you. So
awesome. Danny, this has been a great conversation. I look forward. We've got one more that we're planning to have with you, and I know that one's going to be good as well. So thanks for being on.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
Danny Kerr, everyone. So Danny talked about a lot of the same things, but I liked his approach. Just, this is, I think, the way that we have to think now as business owners.
I would agree.
But so when we talk about the way we think, right, we're shifting it. We're starting to talk about something that you like to talk a lot about, which is mindset.
Yeah.
And we said it in the beginning. There's a lot of old ways. We write about this in our book, Blue Collar Proud. There's this old way of doing things, and then there's the new paradigm or the new way of growing a business. And we see that a lot. But I want you to talk specifically about how you've seen businesses miss out on being able to hire good people because of old ways of thinking, old mindsets.
I would say one of the very first things that I hear are the unintentional consequences of language. Okay? So when we have certain mindsets, we also have certain language patterns and certain words that we use that we never go, and I've been guilty of this. This is one of the reasons I'm bringing this up. We have certain words and certain ways that we phrase things or go about things or inflections or whatever that we do that are no longer valid. And I'm not talking about politically correct words. I'm talking about respect. Because there were certain things that were perfectly okay when I was growing up that in today's world, and it's not because my meaning of those words has changed. It's because the perception and the new meanings of those words have changed. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Language does change over time.
Language changes over time. And, you have to be able to change with the times in order to make sure that you're not repelling people with the way that you're trying to approach them. All right? And I see this in some of the language in ads, some of the language in recruiting language. So I think it's real important for you to go through that and have other people on your team go through that critically and say, is there anything in here that is going to turn someone away? Okay, is there any language in here that that a female may not want to
cause alarm bells to go off for
go out, so that you're not. There's tremendous females. I saw some just recently in Europe, that are sweeps. We've got a lot here in the States that are sweeps. So don't think a female can't be an electrician or a plumber. I lived next door to one of the best electricians in town who was female a few years back. So, females are sometimes just categorized wrong, and they want to work for friendly companies, that understand them and understand where they are. And I think that's just part of it. And that's a mindset thing. And it doesn't mean, and this is the other thing, it doesn't mean that you're having to acquiesce to the feminine, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Some of and that's a mindset issue. We think, oh, well, if I want to attract females, then all of a sudden I have to say, well, feminists are okay. I don't care what you believe. Just be careful in your language and in your mindset that whatever you believe doesn't necessarily mean that it's right or that it's...
Just be aware that other people hold other views.
Yes,
right?
that everybody else believes that way. Yeah. And that's what I was trying to say. You can believe and think you're right all day long, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to believe you with you, or have that belief
have that,
with
share
you.
that belief, right?
And I liked what you said before. You know, I grew up in a time that basically, as long as it didn't affect anybody else, as long as whatever I said or did had no cause and effect to another person, it was kind of like, yeah, do whatever you want. You know, have fun, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But as soon as it affects somebody else, all of a sudden what you were doing or saying or whatever, then there was a cause to that. And so you needed to be careful. We've lost that.
Yeah.
And so that's another mindset thing that I've always had is like, yeah, as long as you don't like it doesn't cause something for somebody else, I'm cool with it. But as soon as it causes something, then all of a sudden you need to be careful about how you're using the language. And language is a direct...
Or not, but just understand that not being sensitive
Yeah.
to other people's views or understanding that other people have views that are different than yours means that you run the risk of preventing yourself from tapping into an entirely incredible source of customers as well as employees.
Yes. And what I hear a lot of times is this. Well, there's just nobody out there willing to work. And that's what is said, but I hear there's just nobody out there willing to work for me. And it's because you've made that statement, there's nobody out there willing to work for me. So guess what? There's not. Because whatever you say and believe is.
Yeah.
So if you think there are good people out there willing to work for you, there will be. If you think there's nobody out there willing to work for you, then you're right. Mm-hmm. Either way, you're right.
It's mindset.
Yeah, it's mindset, because you're looking for the good people that are willing to work for you if you believe they're out there. If you don't think anybody's out there, you're just not looking.
Yeah.
You can put all the ads in the world, but everybody that walks through their door knows you're curmudgeon because you've already decided that there's nobody out there willing to work for me. And if you use language that keeps people away, if you do those types of things, yeah, you're right. And it starts with mindset. You can't say there's thousands of people out there willing to work for me and then never go seek them, never recruit, never put an ad out. You know, that's mindset without action. So you have to follow the mindset with action. But if you have a negative mindset going in, especially when it comes to recruiting and hiring, you're done. Don't. You're going to be by yourself. And I've seen it.
Yeah, we talk with businesses frequently that have gone from being a 15-person business to becoming a 7, 6, 5-person business. Mm-hmm. And they say that nobody's willing to work for them. But you look at the people that they're willing to hire, and that's where the discrepancy is. They want to hire people of the same age, from the same background, who already have the skills, because they don't want to mess with people who, younger generation that they can't understand and don't want to train.
Yeah, and they don't want to change, and it's all you got to change. You just have to change. You can't start a business being a technician and turn into a business owner without changing. You have to change. Yeah, you and I've gone through that. I mean, we started our marketing business. It was you and I, and we did everything in the beginning. And we had to totally change. I mean, to the point that I recently told my staff, you guys got to tell me what's going on because I can't keep up anymore. Mm-hmm. Y'all are doing all the keeping up. And so, so educate me. But I have to be willing to let them educate me, so that when people ask a question, I have the answer, and I have to trust that those things are right. It's the same thing. Don't hire anybody you don't trust. And just because somebody screws up and maybe does something that you said, oh, I shouldn't have trusted that person, don't punish everybody else on your team because one person didn't live up to your expectation. Because all that does is it devalues them as people. We've
talked with millennials that show up for an interview, and afterwards it's like, how did it go? Well, I don't think I'm going to get it. Why? Well, the owner has already made up his mind that millennials don't want to work.
Yeah. I mean, that's the truth. And so It starts with mindset.
Yeah.
And then after mindset's action.
I think something you said about change, and I'll just float this statement and get your comment on it. I think the degree of success that anybody achieves in business is directly correlated with the degree of willingness to change.
Oh, I think that's 100% true. And I could pretty much pinpoint, I mean, I'm not going to make any names, but I can tell you that is true of people that I see and know where they came from and know where they are now and the success that they've had. Absolutely 100% true. And they're still growing. They're not stopped.
And change is still painful.
Yes, and they're still talk about how they screwed up and this happened and that happened and how they're having to make changes and read other books and different kind of books and, all that kind of stuff. And then there's the same guys that are, have hired, since we've known them, have hired 20 people and they still only have 4 on their staff because they cannot keep their staffs going, and it's because they don't listen, they don't read, they don't change.
They don't want to grow. They don't want to change.
Exactly the same. Mm-hmm. They say they want to grow, but if you say you're going to grow, then what you're ultimately saying is, I'm going to change. I'm going to change. I am changing. So if you're stagnant and not growing, it's because you're not changing.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, let me just hit a few announcements then before we shut it down today. If you would, first of all, I just want to tell you, we talked about the book today, Blue Collar Proud, 10 Principles for Building a Kick-Ass Business You Love. It's available in paperback and Kindle from Amazon.com. Those 10 principles are a lot of what we've just talked about here today. Leadership principles, hiring principles for working better with employees, core values, purpose, mission. All of these things are a part of the conversation today. So check that out. Get the book. If you get it, I'd love to have a review for it too. You can leave a review for us on Amazon.com. That just helps us be able to get in front of more service businesses and help them grow as well. Also, don't forget you can download our free show app. It's available in the App Store, Apple App Store, as well as Google Play. It's got good content in there. Every single week we release a new episode. You'll get a notice in the app that it's available as soon as it's available. We've also got links to some bonus content, some special offers like the one we talked about today for Closing Commander. Get your first month free when you click that link to sign up. Also, just to let you know, if you'd like to let us know how we're doing, if there's something about what we're doing that you really connect with, or if there's something that we're doing that you're like, not so much, we want to know about that. That helps us do a better job. Just like your business lives on reviews, so does this show. So if you get value from what we do, please pay us with a review when you get a chance. Most of all, though, come hang out with us over in the Blue Collar Proud Nation Facebook group. It's a great place. Good conversations happen there, and having your voice there and contributing would be great as well. Let's see. That's it. So you can also find out about all the other places where you can connect with us by simply going to bcpshow.com/connect. And that is going to do it for this episode of the Blue Collar Proud Show. As always, Taylor and I want to thank you for listening. I also want to thank the people that make this show happen every week. Aaron Blaze, our technical director, Jessica Wynn, our show coordinator, and Jonathan Sanders, our community manager. So until next time, remember that it takes the same energy, the same blood, sweat, and tears to build a business that you hate as it does to build one that makes you proud and takes you where you want to go. So why not build it the Blue Collar Proud way? We will see you again right here next time.
The Blue Collar Proud Show is a production of the Blue Collar Proud Network.